We are going to move on to the second component of the public hearing, which is the actual public hearing. To my right, to your left, you will see the questions and opportunities that you outline. What we didn't want to do is take a lot of time with the report out portion. However, we will synthesize what is written out, and everybody who provided us an email, you will get in writing the recommendations that came from the table discussions. And I would also encourage you, because if your table was like my table, there were specific questions that came up. These are the folks who run the small business strategy. We're having a public hearing so you can hold them / me accountable. So if you have specific questions or ideas that came out of your group discussions, ask them now. The best way to move a conversation is to have the conversation, and so let's have the conversation. At this time, I'd like to call the Small and Minority Business Budget Hearing to order. As we mentioned before, first we will hear from our two departments. I'll ask a couple of questions. After that, we'll hear from our emerging efforts around small business and entrepreneurship. So first up, I'm going to turn it over to Director Stevens for his presentation.
Thank you, President Hardin. The Department of Development is pleased to provide you with the 2020 Small Business Report, which will detail the department's activities throughout 2019 and provide an overview for 2020 pertaining to the small business and entrepreneurial-related initiatives here in the City of Columbus. In late 2018, the Department of Development undertook a small business study that provided the Office of Small Business and Entrepreneur Development with an opportunity to examine how city funds support and invest in small and entrepreneurial businesses throughout the City of Columbus. This was important because our team anecdotally knew that the city's existing system was not optimal to provide the level of service needed by the small business and entrepreneurs within the City of Columbus. So we worked with a third party to validate our market viability. To that end, we embarked upon and completed a comprehensive citywide assessment of the small business ecosystem. Many of you in this room participated in that, and I really appreciate it. And that's something Henry Galat led through this effort, and it's probably one of the best small business action plans I've seen in my 20-plus years working in local government. We talk a lot about helping small businesses. This was not just a strategy, this was an action plan. So I'm really pleased to present the work we're doing here and how we're going to be implementing that in 2020. We've announced the findings of our Phase 1 assessment in June of 2019, which identified over 20 gaps in the small business ecosystem. Gaps included lack of awareness of resources, little coordination among service providers, and insufficient resources focusing on businesses that are in the post-launch phase. It's really interesting. This was a lot of the discussion that I had at the table I sat at prior to coming up here. So we're hearing that throughout. Likewise, the study revealed there's a significant gap in the access to capital for minorities and women, as well as the need to provide technical assistance to these groups through the lens of cultural competency. During Phase 2, which started in July, the city and Next Street LLC, which is our partner in this, began working with an expanded advisory committee that by then consisted of 40 individuals and examined the findings from the study and programs, began prioritizing and condensing them into 4 strategic work streams. Over the course of 2019, a framework was developed for the purpose of aggregating the interest of potential funders and systemizing the work going forward. Presented here is the Small Business Agenda Framework that has been implemented. You also have a copy of that at your table. Take that with you. It's a great resource. The most important thing, and we'll get it to you by the end of the night, if you don't have Henry's phone number, you want Henry's phone number. You'll notice that the city is playing an overarching role with other recognizable organizations that are serving as ecosystem builders in partnership with the city. Each builder is charged with maintaining momentum of their working committee, continuity of the agenda, while developing year-over-year initiatives as part of an annual action plans. Development will use those annual action plans, complete with the key performance indicators, to measure the success of the strategies and overall agenda. So one of our builders who's working with us on that is Sadiqa White and Sadiqa and Associates, and she's bringing thank you for raising your hand, Sadiqa, a tremendous breadth of experience to this discussion, and we really appreciate the work she's doing on that. I want to highlight a couple of the key accomplishments from 2019 that included the launch of a city-branded management and technical assistance program under the Accelerate Columbus brand. Through this program, we partnered with Small Business Development Center at Columbus State, and YMT Consultants offered 2 distinct cohorts of training targeting businesses by business life cycle stages and by geographic location. To that end, we graduated over 150 businesses in 2019 over several cohorts, with one of the graduates going to complete and win the Pitch to Win Natural Venture Capital Pitch Competition sponsored by Nationwide Insurance and Blue Vinyl Capital. Working with our consultant, we took a ground-up first-step approach by engaging our local neighborhood merchant associations to gain their perspective and input on the next generation of the neighborhood commercial revitalization program. To that end, we are using this information to access and refine future program offerings for the NCR program. We also spent this year being very intentional in defining and developing our online small business website and other outreach resources. Given the fact that we live in a technological age, we have to continually ask to make information available to our constituents using the most up-to-date means. So this is a good highlight of the small business agenda, whose mission is to cultivate an inclusive, dynamic, continuously improving small business ecosystem that enables all entrepreneurs to enjoy equitable opportunity for success that contributes to local economic development outcomes. We envision a coordinated, connected, and vibrant network that affords small businesses, in particular enterprises owned by entrepreneurs of color, the opportunity to start, sustain, and scale their businesses to create economic empowerment for all. When we submitted our budget earlier towards the second half of 2019, we had just under $1 million in the development budget for small business efforts. We know to implement this small business agenda, we need another additional $1 million. We need to focus on our online portal to bring people in and provide them the resources we've talked about. We need to continue to build the brand, and we need to continue to build up our support system out there to help small businesses. I saw you looking at your watch, so I'm going to wrap up my 5 minutes and be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. No, with these Apple Watches, I was reading a text message, so I wasn't. But it's equally rude, so I apologize. Your last statement was speaking specifically to the budget, and the department has spent a year and a half under the leadership of Mr. Henry Galat, to come up with this small business agenda. I've said before that I think that the city has. We were doing small business, but we were doing hodgepodge small business, just doing here and there. I do believe that this is a thought-out strategy, a full strategy. But you spoke to what is funded right now in the budget to implement versus what you need to actually execute the agenda. How do we think through rectifying those two pieces as we move forward through the budget process? What we have versus what we need to actually implement what the strategy says.
So some of the dollars we currently have budgeted, we will work on implementing the agenda. We know that not everything can be implemented with the dollars we have. I can tell you, as council considers this budget for 2020, I would ask that you consider looking at additional funding that could help us launch the online small business resource navigation portal that's going to track service engagements and referrals across the ecosystem. I also think there's an opportunity that we need to improve the marketing campaign around our small business agenda, similar to what we did with Celebrate One, to inform entrepreneurs and small business owners of the streamlined and vetted resources that are available. I've asked Quentin up here to join me because he leads this effort on a day-to-day basis, and I'll turn to Quentin and see if there's anything that's missing from that request.
No, I I think the director said everything appropriately. Yes, we need more resources. There are a number of initiatives that are important to make the commitments that we have to all the committees and all the individuals that have worked with us the last 14 to 16 months actually go. Two of the programs and initiatives the director just stated. The other initiative is just resources to help fund the partners that will be part of the ecosystem and that will actually provide some of the technical assistance, as well as some of the other business coaching services that we're looking to provide as well, as well as some of the programmatic resources to actually implement some of the programs that will be part of the initiative.
The second question I have pertains to coordination. In our private meetings monthly, the question that I ask of this team up here is the folks out in this audience are clients. How are we working to make sure that our services are clear and understood? We have a small business strategy, but two different departments that are running it. How do we make sure that it's clear and concise who you call when you have an issue, when you have two different departments? How are we making progress in having a clear, concise, small business agenda that incorporates the great work that the development partner did on the small business agenda, that incorporates, acknowledges, and stands side by side with the disparity study and its implementation that is coming out of ODI? And that really will be a two-part question, one for ODI to answer as well when you guys.
In short, it's going to be a work in process. I think externally and from a stakeholder perspective, it shouldn't matter what door you knock on to access the resources. It's our job to make sure that we make the referrals and that we make it seamlessly for you, whatever door you enter into the city, the resources, it's on us and our teams to make sure that you get it. And we're talking and coordinating quite a bit on that. I think from another perspective, we both are implementing new strategies. We have been historically doing things, to your point, President Harden, where we have been very reactionary as it relates to the small business assistance we provided. What we're doing now from a development perspective is creating a strategy that will allow us to develop an ecosystem by which we are not in the weeds and that we are being more strategic in what we're doing, and that we're able to proactively find gaps in the resources, find gaps in the system to provide resources and or strategies to help the whole Columbus ecosystem be better. And we haven't done that to date, to be quite honest. And so we are talking, actually we were talking for about an hour and 45 minutes today about how we're gonna try and find some of the correlation with some of the new strategies and how do we implement some of those things more strategically ahead of time now that we are at the beginning of both of our new initiatives, and try to do it in a way that it's very strategic and that you all don't see it from an external perspective, and that we are addressing a lot of those things internally now before we start getting in, quite frankly, some of our bad habits, and that we're deliberate about how we do it. And so that will be a work in process, but I think we have a good plan that we're looking to implement.
And Director Brown, if you don't mind, I'll tell you where there is strong alignment, and that is between the City Council and the mayor, and the elected leadership of this city has made it clear we need to figure out how to work together because economic empowerment for all is the priority. So the communication that we have and how we are making sure we're serving you, you don't need to see how the sausage is made behind the scenes. You just need to make sure we're delivering those services in an effective and efficient manner.
And I would echo those sentiments that were just shared by Director Stevens and Deputy Director Harris. It really is about how we leverage both of our initiatives for the benefit of our stakeholders, right? And so when we look at the disparity study and its implementation, how we go about implementing those recommendations and addressing the disparities that we see in the report it is in large part dependent upon how the small business agenda is shaped and how it can help to inform those recommendations and our response to those disparities, and likewise, with respect to the small business agenda, how we ensure that our minority and women-owned businesses, their needs are represented there in the small business agenda. So there is a lot of alignment between our respective works, and we're beginning to really work through the process of better coordination and better information that we can share with each of you.
Director Arodia, you want to just go ahead with your presentation?
Alrighty. So we already talked a little bit about, let's see if I can too far up. I already talked a little bit about the office, so I'm going to just start here and deal with our budget. I do want to share, however, that we are a fairly new department with respect to this focus on diversity and inclusion in a much broader sense as compared to the Equal Business Opportunity Commission office. So when we talk about supplier diversity, we're really talking about best practice work and how we strategically source vendors to meet the needs of the City of Columbus, but also how we begin to develop supportive resources that support you in your growth and development. So this supplier diversity concept is much broader than perhaps what you may have seen in previous years under the Equal Business Opportunity Commission office, or how we have approached this work in the past. So when we begin to talk about our office, we have begun to staff up the office. We were previously at a total of 11 authorized staff to support this work, largely on the supplier diversity side because of that work, but also because we understand that with the disparity study, we have a lot of work to do with respect to how we really make this take shape for the minority and women-owned business community to eliminate those disparities, but to also begin to grow and develop your businesses in a manner that makes you competitive with our city contracting, but also begin to grow you to scale so that we can see that growth across our city. And so our 2020 budget, let me see if I do this right. We're all over the place. Give me just a second. One of the things I'll add here is, as we look into our 2020 budget, we are very intentional about how we approach this work. And so it is really about a community effort. When we talk about diversity and inclusion, we're talking about how we interact with our community, how we interact with our suppliers, how we create a workplace environment that is supportive of this work, and also how we work with the workforce in recruiting a diverse talent pool that really supports this work ongoing. We understand that the workforce of today becomes the business owners of tomorrow. And so it's very critical for us that we do this right so that we are able to continue to build our small businesses throughout our ecosystem. And so our 2020 budget includes some additional staff that supports this work. And let me just jump to the right page. We see about a 50% increase in our budget as compared to 2019. That includes an additional staff, but it also includes funding for a number of initiatives that will continue to allow us to achieve the momentum that we've had with respect to our work in diversity and inclusion. Obviously, we'll be talking about the implementation of the recommendations of the disparity study, which have some costs associated with it as well. The procurement of a software system that helps us better manage our supplier diversity work. And so while we do a lot of certification related to supplier diversity, the process of how we manage your entry points into the city, how we manage your relationship and engagement with the city through that contracting, and then ultimately at the end, how we count that utilization becomes very important. And then the last piece, and probably the most important piece, Terry would say, is the contract compliance, how we ensure that our contractors and the city is accountable to you for the results of that supplier diversity program. So the software system becomes really key for us in really moving this work to the next level. I've talked with our team repeatedly about driving with impact. And so the data and how it informs our actions in working with each of you becomes critical for us. We need to understand where you are in your business, what it is you're trying to accomplish, and where, as we as a city, we can help you to grow. And so we drive with impact, we'll drive through data, and we'll ensure that we're able to achieve those objectives. In addition to that, we are relaunching what we've traditionally called a business opportunity assessment program or process. Very much in line with the small business agenda, but it is responding to the needs of our small businesses who often come to us with requests or needs that don't fit nicely and neatly in the normal day-to-day work of our offices, but allows us the opportunity to leverage the small business agenda, to leverage our relationships with other partners throughout the community in order to ensure that you get the access to the resources that you need to be successful. On the workforce diversity side, we'll continue this work around recruitment strategy and how we engage a diverse pipeline of employees who could potentially work for the city. That includes some diligent work in our workplace culture. We talk a lot about we recruit we recruit diverse employees, but what do we do when we get them there? And so we want to ensure that we have a workplace culture that is supportive of you and your objectives and making sure that we can retain that talent. As we look at this work, we find that the city of Columbus, in this region in particular, really stands out as a leader in diversity and inclusion. Not many jurisdictions, municipalities are doing this work. If they are, it's not as cohesive, and so we really want to stand out as a leader in this effort. And so our 2020 budget does include some work around a diversity and inclusion symposium that brings HR leaders and diversity practitioners to the table to talk through best practices in diversity and inclusion and how we can continue to grow the city of Columbus as an inclusive environment that is supportive of all residents and all businesses that are seeking to engage with the city. And then lastly, there's been a lot of conversations around our public safety and how we continue to support the increase of or the diversification of our safety forces in the city. And so we'll begin working with the Department of Public Safety to ensure that we are able to diversify that team and create a process and an ability for diverse employees to gain access to those opportunities as well. So those are some of the highlights of our 2020 budget, and I'm going to speak quickly through our priorities. If you want to touch on some of those, I will round it out with just a quick update on disparity study implementation and what you can expect moving forward.
So as Director Brown has mentioned, what's most importantly is community engagement. Moving forward in when we talk about disparity study findings, there are 14 points of recommendation that we will move forward with implementation with. But most importantly, what do they mean for businesses? We're looking at how we create this environment of business development and capacity building. We have a lot of small businesses and working with the Department of Development that come to us who are looking for direct assistance. So in that capacity building model through the Business Opportunity Program, we want to do a direct assessment of businesses and where they stand and what are the best fit to grow their company throughout Central Ohio. Also, we talk about mentor-protege. One of the recommendations with the disparity study is how do we mentor businesses and pair them up with larger companies that are more established across the city. We want to build a mentor-protege program that is meaningful and it shows incentivizing opportunities for small businesses to partner and to grow in Central Ohio. But also, we talked a little bit about the diversity software system, and this is very key when we talk about compliance. When we go out and we meet with businesses across Central Ohio, we do outreach. Once they become a minority or women-owned business that is certified with the City of Columbus, what are the next steps? Once they find an opportunity, they get a contract, we want to be able to monitor that opportunity, that contract from both the prime and the subcontractor, and that's what compliance means. It's transparency, but it's also monitoring to make sure that we are holding our own feet to the fire as well. But those strategies are on our plate, and we are intentional in making sure that supplier diversity is robust throughout the city of Columbus.
Thank you. I've not been keeping up, so let me advance just a little bit. So I just want to talk really quickly about the disparity study implementation, just so that you have some sense for what you can expect over the next few months. So when we look at this, the legislation was approved in November. Contract modification issued to Mason Tillman in December. We're in the process of going through a scope review and identifying an action plan that speaks to the level of engagement with our community, our business owners around the implementation of that disparity study, but also making sure that all of those things that need to happen from the perspective of ordinance changes, development of a program, and all of the things that go along with that are covered. And so that scope review takes place actually next week. And along with that process, we will be establishing a business advisory council. I believe it's very important that we consult those who are most impacted by the policies that we'll enact here to ensure that we're doing the right thing, that we're going about this work in a way that is meaningful for you and helpful. And so we'll be engaging with small business owners around this work. We anticipate having a kickoff meeting where there will be a larger review of the implementation plan with that advisory council later in March. And then we expect that the total implementation from start to finish would last about 6 to 9 months. And so we would anticipate by Q4 that we'll be coming before council with a new program and also with new ordinances that will support the implementation strategy.
2020.
2020, I'm sorry, Aaron. Outcomes of the study include the establishment, the establishment of those priorities within those recommendations, the drafting of a new program, and so we will have a minority and women-owned business program with all of the elements that you traditionally know to exist within these programs, new ordinances that would go before council, and then something that we've been hearing a lot about, and we've talked a little bit about tonight at the tables that I've had an opportunity to sit in on, is how we make our procurement process easier for you to navigate. And so with our disparity study implementation, there is a parallel work that is happening to ensure that our procurement process can be navigated by you in a simple fashion so that we can support your success with city contracting. And so the 2020 budget really helps us to do those things in a manner that is engaging, but also results in a level of impact that you would expect to see from your city Department of Diversity and Inclusion. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Director. Just two things quickly, and then we'll move forward. This time last year, how your staff was two or three. This year, at this point, you are closer to a full staff. Would you talk about your staffing structure with folks? And then secondly, again, the reason why I took over this committee almost was specifically because of the disparity study. I really am putting a lot of focus on this, but I say it privately, but I will say it publicly. I need the community to put a lot of focus on the disparity study too. Would you raise your hand if you've read the disparity study? I think that needs to be everybody in the room because where you can help us hold the administration accountable is what the disparity study says and recommends, and then what our outcomes are should be very close together. And the only way that will happen is if folks hold us accountable and watch and read and understand what this company, Mason Tillman, who has done disparity studies all around the country, who, when they come into communities, are not that popular with some folks because what they have to say. But so how can folks who don't know where the disparity study is, how can they get that information? And then to just your staffing, and then we'll move on with the.
Sure. So the disparity study, both the executive summary, which might be a little lighter reading for you, as well as the full report, is online at our website, columbus.org/diversity. I would, as the council president has mentioned, I would encourage you to take a look at that, become engaged. We're really doing this differently. So this is an intentional effort on our part to ensure that your voices are heard. And so if you have any thoughts around the recommendations and how they get implemented, we really do want to hear from you. So that's the first piece. With respect to our staffing, we are now up to 8. We have, with the 2020 budget, we will have an authorized staffing level of 14. Much of that staff, the lion's share of it, will be on the supplier diversity side because we recognize the importance of the disparity study and its impact to minority businesses and our larger community. And so they will be focused on not only our certification management, but also our business development and support, working with our departments to understand those contracting opportunities to help you navigate that, but also contract compliance. Compliance in a more general sense, where we're really helping to hold folks' feet to the fire and be accountable for the results related to that disparity study.
Thank you, Director. Just for the sake of time, we will continue. I have asked for a project that I'm proposed in this budget to fund, the Columbus Fashion Initiative to come and present. I wanted to uplift this effort because it's something that I believe in terms of economic development. Historically, cities have focused economic development on small or large business development, bringing the Amazons to Columbus, bringing the 500 person employers to the city. That is good, and that is a basis for economic development, but real economic development is small business development. And what I really do believe in is ecosystem, is place-based development. And so just like the Idea Foundry on the west side, where it brought like-minded groups together, industries, and created a space for them to work together, learn from one another with support from the city. I believe that this initiative, the fashion initiative, is one of those areas where we need to be, Columbus can be the best place to start a fashion-based business in the country. We're already ranked number 3 in fashion design in Columbus. In the country, people don't know that. So you scratch your head, we're right behind New York and LA. We have to leverage that we have going for us and make it a economic development tool and strategy. And so I'm supporting this initiative. Another one that I am supporting similar to this is Black Hack. Black Hack is a minority-led, minority development space that will be co-located in the Urban League in their new empowerment zone area. With the same focus, same idea that when you bring like-minded people together around industry, around a certain area, support, make sure that they have the backing, that neat things can happen and new businesses can be growth out of that. And so, with that, we'll hear from the folks from the Fashion Initiative, Columbus Fashion Initiative.
How's everybody doing? All right. My name is Johanan Terrell. I am the CEO and partner of a branding firm called Warhol on Wall Street here in Columbus, Ohio. And I am also the newly appointed director of the Columbus Fashion Initiative. So I want to tell everybody a little bit about the Columbus Fashion Initiative because like Council President Hardin said, we believe that this is a really big opportunity for Columbus. It's a really big opportunity for our communities, and it's a really big opportunity to start small businesses here in Columbus, Ohio. So I'll kind of run you guys through a quick outline of what the Columbus Fashion Initiative is. So like President Hardin said, Columbus is the #3 fashion city. So by a show of hands, how many people knew that? How many people didn't know that? Right. So a lot of times when we tell people that, a lot of people scratch their heads and they say, there's no way in hell that Columbus is the #3 fashion city. But we are, right? And so there's a few things that kind of make up that #3 fashion city moniker. So one is Columbus is the top logistical and distribution hub for fashion. A couple facts I'll throw at you. 80% of international fashion that comes into America flies through Columbus, right? We also have the distribution centers for huge fashion brands, not just the ones that are housed here, but companies like Gap, Zulily, Flight Club, Lululemon, and Shopify just opened up a distribution center here, and more, right? We're about 10-hour driving distance away from 46% of the country. So Columbus is definitely strategically placed as a logistical hub for fashion brands. Two, I said number one metro area for U.S. concentration of large apparel headquarters. So L Brands, Victoria's Secrets, Express, Abercrombie & Fitch, Ascena, Justice, Lane Bryant, DSW, all of those brands are headquartered right here in Columbus, Ohio. Many people from our communities work for those companies. We're also #3 in the country for designers. That means that Columbus, Ohio has more designers, top designers, than any other city in the country outside of New York and LA, right? A lot of people don't know that. You say, where are these designers at, right? Where's that ecosystem? That includes, matter of fact, one of the designers of, I think about 4 pairs of Jordans, it works out of Columbus, Ohio. People who've worked for Louis Vuitton work right here in Columbus, Ohio. We have some of the best designers in the world living right here in our city. Columbus is also named the Test Market USA, right? A lot of companies come here to test their products before they launch globally because of the way the city is set up. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere else. And also, we're a great place to live. The cost of living is lower. The communities are better. We're a big city. There's a lot of land. There's cheap land here. There's just a lot of different things about Columbus that make us a choice for brands and companies in the fashion industry to be based out of Columbus, Ohio. But the question is, right, why don't we see that? Why don't we really feel the impact of the fashion industry here in Columbus, Ohio? And so right now we're in this state where we have this challenge and we have this opportunity. On the challenge side, as you see, a lot of industries are changing. And so with those industries changing, you see a lot of shakeup in old traditional models. So if you've been hearing the news, and matter of fact, today it just happened. L Brands just let go of a couple hundred people. Express just let go of 10% of their staff, right? But these are people who have moved to Columbus or have, born in Columbus and have gotten jobs at these companies. And so when these companies are struggling and people are losing their jobs, where do they go? Do they move to New York? Do they move to LA? So you have this challenge. And most of that is because of just digitization, right? So now people are buying more clothes online. They're not going to the mall. So these big organizations are seeing that they're getting beat to market by companies that are just selling direct to consumers through social media, direct to consumers from websites and online. So there's the challenge when it comes to our local retailers that are a big economic part of our city. So what are we doing as a city to be a part of that change to help those organizations out? So there's a challenge. On the opportunity side, the same things that are disrupting the fashion industry also provide us an opportunity. So the big thing is you don't need to live in New York or LA anymore to get into the fashion industry. You can start, make, create, build, produce, and ship your product from anywhere in the country. So back to that number one, if we're the logistical hub for fashion here in the United States, then it's easier for me and you to create a brand, to start a brand, produce it, and ship it right from our own backyard. So here's where we see the opportunity for Columbus, Ohio to really put a stake in the fashion industry, is to focus on the creators, focus on small business, focus on those opportunities to take fashion, embrace it, put money into that because we own it, it's ours, and then build that up naturally. And so now Columbus can become that center, that fashion capital of the Midwest, the best place to start or grow a fashion business. We can do that right here in our city. So like I said, Columbus, lacks the ecosystem and the culture to catalyze on this, right? So our goal is to kind of leverage those strengths in retail and fashion to make our city the best place to start or grow a fashion-based business. So we did a lot of research. We came to the city, we talked to President Hardin and a couple other members of City Council and said, hey, we see this big opportunity. They said, look, go out, find out the information, bring it back to us. If it's viable, we'll get behind it. And that's what we did. We did a qualitative and quantitative study over the last year. We talked to students, designers, retailers, entrepreneurs to find out where was the disconnect at. And so from that study, we came up with 4 pillars of the Columbus Fashion Initiative. And these 4 pillars are how we're going to build this initiative together. So one is learn. Right? In order for us to become the fashion city of the future, we have to give our youth the opportunity to learn the business of fashion. So it's not all about design. It's not just about design. It's about logistics, shipping, technology, e-commerce, all of the things that happen before you see garments on the shelves. We need to get education in our schools so that our youth have a better opportunity to either get a job at one of these retailers and innovate there, start their own business of their own, or just, create their own products. So education from K through 12 is one of our missions, but also lowering the barriers of entry for anyone in this room to be able to learn about the business of fashion. So what we're doing currently is working with our educational anchors to create vocational programming so that any of us can learn from e-commerce, design, pattern making, entrepreneurship, videography, marketing, all within the fashion industry so that we can create our own business models, or at least be better suited to get a job or get into the business of fashion. So learn is definitely a very important pillar of this. Make. Right now, the change in fashion is also going from big production that you see a lot overseas to small batch production. So another area we see an opportunity in is for us to create small batch manufacturing right here in Columbus, Ohio, so that you can produce small runs. So the large retailers, they want to test some new designs, some innovative fashion, they can do that right here in their own backyard instead of having to go through China. If a designer here wants to move here, a designer starts here and they want to create 100 pairs of jeans, we should be able to do that right in our own backyard. We have land, we have the opportunity, we have the retailers, we have the resources here, so that's another thing that we're looking to do is build small batch manufacturing right here in Columbus. Another thing is innovate, right? So how are we leveraging technology and innovation? I just saw an article today that Columbus is one of the top cities on the rise for technology. So how are we getting our youth who are already in the tech, they already know that, how are we getting them to help us innovate in the fashion industry? How are we learning more and more technology, or actually getting our tech partners like our Rev1s and our Battels and our other tech startups to get involved in the fashion industry so that we can start innovating on fashion as well? And then the last thing is experience. So just like we said, a lot of people don't know that we're a fashion city. How do we reflect that as a city? When people say, what's up with Columbus, and you tell them, Columbus is a great city, they don't think that, right? They think we're a cow town. They think, what y'all got, just the Buckeyes, and they think that's all we have, right? But we have a lot more than that. So our thing is create more energy, more activity, more excitement, be able to reflect our fashion expertise and the fashion powerhouse that we really are, so we let people know when you come to Columbus, you're coming to the fashion capital of the Midwest. So these are our 4 pillars of the Columbus Fashion Initiative, and this is how we'll grow this ecosystem and move forward. Am I on time? I'm good? Okay.
One, speak to how much we funded you for and where you currently are, and so we can.
Yeah, sure. So we came back, we brought all this information back to President Hardin and City Council, and once they saw it, they saw the opportunity here, and, Shannon said, I'm gonna lean in. And so the city provided us $100,000, and that $100,000 is actually going towards us opening our first facility this year, which is actually happening inside the Idea Foundry. So the Idea Foundry, once named, Thank you, for sure. Actually, thank you, So we're really excited about that, and actually that is coming up in phase 1. So we've done our research, that was our exploratory phase. So now phase 1 is we're gonna actually open up our first, kind of like our temporary home inside the Columbus Idea Foundry. That's located on West State Street, right down in Franklinton. And there you'll be able to come in, you'll be able to take classes, you'll be able to make things, you'll be able to connect with other people in the fashion industry, and you'll be able to either start a business or even get recruited by one of our retailers or retailers that we're attracting here to the city. So we're super excited about that. Phase 2 is going to be, we're going to actually develop our own large-scale, 60,000 square foot type of facility where we house all of this learning, education, makerspace, workforce development, innovation, all of that in one building. So kind of like our own idea foundry for fashion. So currently we're raising money for that too as well, getting our partners aligned, and the city has been very gracious to say that they'll support us as long as we keep building the momentum on what we're doing. So that is our phase 2. And when we brought that to the city, they said, you know, let's think bigger than that. If we're already the #3 fashion city, let's take it bigger. Let's make a full garment district. And so our phase 3 is to really create a master plan to build a fashion garment district here in Columbus, Ohio, to where we're now attracting more industry to our city. You know, they're already selecting us. People are choosing Columbus because they know we have, you know, great opportunities here. We have, you know, skilled experts in fashion. We have logistics and distribution. So let's choose ourselves for once, and let's invest until we have here in our own city. So phase 3 is to open up a full-blown garment district in Columbus, Ohio. And that's pretty much the Columbus Fashion Initiative. If you want more information on it, you can go to columbusfashion.org. It's a splash page up there where you can, you know, see what's going on. We also have a Facebook working group, Columbus Fashion Initiative, on Facebook, and you can see a little bit more behind the scenes stuff of what we've been working on. I'll just give you guys a couple of hints. We're working on bringing, matter of fact, a lot of people don't know that there's a shoe design pathway here. So like I said, the guy who designed the Jordans, he works here in Columbus, Ohio. So we're working with DSW to create a shoe design program and actually looking to bring shoe manufacturing to Columbus, Ohio. Did anybody know that Columbus, Ohio was the biggest manufacturer of shoes? Until 1974, Columbus, Ohio was the biggest manufacturer of women's shoes, and we had 2 of the biggest shoe manufacturing companies. So we're bringing shoe manufacturing back to Columbus, Ohio with partners like DSW. We're talking to Verizon to bring some Verizon labs here for technology. We're attracting other companies here as well too. So look forward to it. We're going to launch this year. You'll see us launching probably end of February. And then I ask all of you, if you're into fashion, you want to get into the business of fashion, to come and check us out once we open up, get signed up for some of these classes, connect with other people in the industry, and really from a small business opportunity. We know who influences fashion and culture, right? So why are we not being able to take advantage of that? We should be connecting with each other, learning, connecting, building, growing here in the city, and seeing where the opportunity takes us. I like what you said to me when you said the workforce of today becomes the small business owner of tomorrow. So by having workforce development, training, and teaching these skills that are needed in the fashion industry, we can help build up that next group of small business owners here in the fashion industry. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really do believe in this initiative. I believe in place-based economic growth. I believe that in 20 years, if done right, if we all stack hands, we will have that fashion district, garment place where folks know that there are jobs there are small business opportunities there is learning there's a community there. And I appreciate Yogi and his team for that work. But we also are here to listen to you, so we want to get to the last phase of this public hearing, which is the public comment. And so we have received several speaker slips. If you still would like to speak, I will stay here until the last speaker. And the directors will stay here until the last speaker. But right now, I think we have 5 speakers that are signed up, so we're going to jump right in. We are going to limit you to 3 minutes, though. But this is where I would encourage you to ask the questions. This is how we really engage in a wholehearted, full conversation. So the first person that we have to speak before us is Mary McCarthy. Mary, if you would approach this microphone. 3 minutes. If you state your name, your address, and any organization that you represent.
Hi, my name is Mary McCarthy. I have 2 organizations. So YMT Consultants, which you mentioned earlier, is a small business consulting firm. And then I also founded the Women's Small Business Accelerator, a nonprofit focused on women entrepreneurship. My address is 2025 Riverside Drive, Columbus, Ohio. And I just wanted to come up and share a success story with you guys tonight. So being part of the Accelerate Columbus Scale Up and Grow program, we graduated 36 entrepreneurs through the program this year. They were in business at least 2 years. 51% were low to moderate income. 49% had a little bit of a higher revenue stream. And through the program, and since its graduation, one of the entrepreneurs that graduated shared with me today in an email that they broke the $1 million mark in 2019. So I want to thank Henry Galat. This was an incredible program. It was his idea. City Council got behind it, development got behind it, and it really shows that if you invest in training for entrepreneurs, they can really grow. I also want to thank Demetra Brown and their group, because I talked her into giving some discount tickets as well for the entrepreneurs going through the program, and that is one of the ways they got to the $1 million mark, is they came and had an exhibitor table and met a lot of individuals within the city and grew the revenue that way. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Mary. The next speaker that we have is Ms. Sadiqa White. The Sadiqa White, one of my favorite people. But you can be rough on me, Ms. Sadiqa.
I've got the clock on.
Thank you so much, Councilman Harden and the rest of Mike Stevens. Believe it or not, I don't know why he looks younger than me, but we started together some years ago working together in economic development. I guess I was actually older than you when I came to this area. But anyway, and also Demetra and Quentin. And I'm going to say we are so fortunate, first of all, for this head table, because these are real workers. But we are fortunate to have, I don't know how we ended up with this gentleman. His name is Mr. Henry Galat. This gentleman right here. He is, and they put it in the paper right, they said he was an architect. An architect is a builder, but they have to have a vision, and they have to know how to actually make all the pieces and the parts weld together so that the structure will stand. That's what we have in this gentleman right here. I just have to give his accolades. But there's a couple of things I want to say back to the fashion guy, and I'll have to try to say this fast. If we had this ecosystem, small business ecosystem already in play, we would have already known about the announcement about the businesses that were letting people go. And before we let those people disperse to other places, we would have garnered information from those people, because believe me, they know things that go on in the larger companies that we could have garnered that information and really economic garden or making businesses in place. We could have helped them make some businesses here. It's not too late to try to get those people through our workforce program, through the city, but that's important as well. I'm going to say, and I'm going to speak probably beyond, no offense to the directors, in any of the budgets, but Columbus is a fortunate city. It's one of the top cities in the United States in terms of its budget. It's AAA rated bonded, which means you have to have more revenues than you actually have expenditures. They've done that over the past. It is time now for council to, because we're in a transformative stage, we're changing economic development. No longer are we going to get the Fords and the big companies that are going to give these high wages and lots of jobs. We're going to have to make it. And so, for example, if 122,000 businesses that we had all just employed one person at a living wage of $20 an hour, if they had guess what? The 2020 plan that proposed to do 150,000 jobs in 10 years, in 1 year, we would have exceeded, and we wouldn't have the economic gap that we see in this community between poor people and the richer people. So I believe, as a citizen, I live in the city of Columbus, that we have got to spend more than what they're asking. And I'm sure the departments will take more, because we've got to catch up with cities like Austin. Even Cincinnati has a more aggressive program than we do for small business development. Small business produces over 90% of the jobs and opportunities in the community. So therefore, it would seem to me that the return on investment for our support would be with small businesses. Not only that, small businesses for minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses are extremely important. As far as the diversity and inclusion is concerned, many of us have been here like Nana and Sue and all these other people, and we know the issue. The issue is the city is not fairly giving out the contracts. They know how to give out the contracts. The big contracts are in water and in sewer and in public infrastructure and in the building. In Linden, they put a $30 million investment in the Parks building, and yes, they had an architect over it that was minority. However, when we look at and analyze what actually is going to happen, how much of that $30 million will go to small businesses and businesses particularly in the Linden area. I tried to help them see how to break those contracts down so that, in fact, more people would have been able to share in the opportunity. But that hasn't happened yet. I won't stop.
Yeah.
I knew my 3 minutes was up. Thank you.
And I wouldn't stop you because you were getting hot. How about you end though with a question? Because I think that you said a lot, but bring the question that gets to what you were speaking. And Stanley, would you come stand here? Because I'm not going to stop the next Ms. Sadika. You're going to make sure we're keeping time at 3 minutes.
To actually increase those budgets at least 3 times of what they're asking. Thank you.
I mean, it's funny that you say that. We are having an internal conversation based off of what is budgeted versus what they have asked for. And the truth is we have not yet gotten to even what they have asked for. And so that's why you saying that is important for us to hear and important for this council to hear and important for the mayor to hear, that if we're really serious about this, then we fund it. And so that as we work through this process over the next several weeks, you will see us leaning into that point. The next speaker to come before council is Mr. Bob Lighty. Bob.
Council President Hardin, the leaders from the city, thank you for doing this. This is important. I'll try to keep this brief. My wife and I live in South Columbus. I've done community work, place-based, if you will, community work there since 1992. And the last 8 years, I've been executive director of the Parsons Area Merchant Association, directly working with entrepreneurs. And I previously worked for ECDI as well, so that thing. I want to put in a plug for what Mr. Henry Galat has put together here, especially with this small business agenda. I've been privileged to be one of the people involved with the advisory committee working this last year over this document. I've been involved with a lot of plans over the years, 28 years. I've never seen something this thorough, especially diving into neighborhoods' economic development. This is an important plan. This plan is one of, I think, 3 documents that I strongly encourage you to fully fund to support our neighborhoods and economic development. This plan is one. The disparity study is another one. If we don't take this attempt to reach out to our minority communities, to women, to people of color, and to try to fully get them engaged in entrepreneurial activities and support them much as they deserve, as much as we all deserve, we're missing this enormous opportunity and leaving human beings, at the table where they should be farther along. The third document is one that Sadika White put together, another initiative of Henry Galat. She put together a very detailed proposal talking about the NCR program. NCR is Neighborhood Commercial Revitalization. This is a little self-serving here because one of my roles with the Parsons Area Merchant Association is helping to implement that program, which has been around since the 80s, okay? This is a program that works currently in 7 different corridors, in the city, including our stretch of Parsons, but places to the Near East Side, Long Street, Main Street, Mount Vernon area, Franklinton, Hilltop, Linden, places where there is a need and opportunity. And we tried to help entrepreneurs, help businesses, and match up with city dollars and other dollars from different organizations. A number of them have been involved in this stuff. And it's just a critical program, and Sadiqa has done a great job. My first meeting with her was 4 hours. This is thorough. I encourage you to read it. She's proposing a serious increase in the budget for this. Again, somewhat self-serving. Right now, in these individual NCR areas, we get, and I thank you for what we get $12,000 in each of those areas to administer and to try to support our businesses. And her proposal is $60,000, and even doing some more areas. My God, the impact you could make, and as well as her proposal is to do more funds for more businesses in more corridors. This is an area that is doing the smart city stuff. This is an area that has saved the crew. We've done a lot of really important investments, but let's invest in our communities. And not sure what happened there, but okay.
Thank you, Mr. Lai. The time's up.
You're over your 3 minutes. Okay.
Thank you so much. Stanley, you got to put some bass in your voice. You say 3 minutes, time's up. No. But we heard you. And it's funny because I think that Henry has stacked this room with a lot of his supporters. But I do think that I agree that this is the most substantive step that we've taken in small business development and having an actual strategy in a long time. And the harder work now is actually implementing it and making sure it's funded. I'm going to ask a question because we haven't really had a question yet. At my table, when we had the breakout strategy, a question came up around access to capital. Under this new strategy, how are we addressing access to capital when we're talking about these small businesses?
I'm trying to think of the shortest way to say this, but historically, the city has been a funder and actually have administered its own loan program. Then we began to utilize our dollars through intermediaries like ECDI, Finance Fund, and others to also manage that process on our behalf. We've currently paused our loan fund. That doesn't preclude us to continue to push our stakeholders towards a lot of those CDFIs. One of the things that the study actually told us is we started that process when those entities didn't exist, so we filled a gap in the ecosystem. And now we have a ecosystem that has a lot of those entities who are providing that form of capital, and so we may be able to step back in that way. One of the things it did say is that there is a gap in the micro space and that there need to be some assistance making microloans to small businesses for various projects as well. So we're definitely adhering to that. And so as part of launching this strategy, those are the things that we're looking at developing, whether the city in and of itself continue to do what they're doing on the financing side, but more importantly, as part of the ecosystem, we do have partner financing entities, which are CDFIs, as well as traditional banks at the table who will be part of the financing capital stack as it relates to helping small businesses do what they do.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker to come before council is Mr. Calvin Harrison. Mr. Harrison.
I just want to add a little bit more clarity. We haven't put to bed the notion around what that capital access component will look like. Christy Campbell with Rev One Ventures is actually leading up that work with us in one of the strategy groups. And just a little bit more to that, we're also looking at how do you aggregate banks, credit unions, CDFIs, venture capital, the whole piece around access to capital, because it's not just related to Main Street type businesses. You'll see that same gap as it relates to venture capital for high growth businesses that's not being met as well. So it's not put to bed. We're still working through that, and that's one of the works of the committee that's handling that, led by Rev. 1.
My name is Calvin Hairston. I'm here to really talk about an issue that really confronts all the residents of the Near East Side, and the issue is about affordable housing. This past year, the Hairston family sold a property at 1223 East Main Street and a property at 1240 Oak Street. And one of the things that we noticed, and I fought for 10 years to try to get funding to redevelop that corner, and in less than 6 months, for some reason, after the sale, funding was found for the new owner. I find that really interesting because the south of Main Street corridor, since we've sold that building, has been inundated with investors and developers. I'm offended because as we look at our community is being gentrified and we're being pushed out. We're being pushed out because we no longer can afford the place that our parents live in. I actually live on a street where $1 million piece of property is being developed directly in front of us. Now, what does that say about development? It says that we no longer can afford to live in our own neighborhood. South of Main Street, the borders of Main Street to the freeway, Parsons to Allen Creek will be the next bastion of outside investors that take over our neighborhood. Now, you may not think that's important, but looking down the road, your kids will not have a place that they can call home. So I'm confronting, we're looking at budgets, and budgets come from the federal government, HUD allocation, community. If they can do it to me, they can do it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. And we have to focus on the trends that are happening in economic development, where they're happening and who they're happening with. That's why I'm trying to use this committee to shine light, bring focus to make sure that everybody gets a chance to be a part of some of the better things that are happening. And it will take more than tonight to fix that issue, but I'm willing and committed to be a part of that and to stick at it with you. Thank you. The last speaker that we have coming before council is Holly Gross. Holly, welcome to the hearing.
Thank you. Council President Hardin and members of the administration, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony. I have a letter that I'll share with your office, and I'm going to abbreviate it to remain within the 3 minutes. Founded in 1884, the Columbus Chamber is the leading voice of business within the 11-county Columbus region. We represent more than 2,000 members, employing over 500,000 workers across all industry sectors. While most of the largest companies in town are investors in our chamber, more than 80% of our members have less than 100 employees, and it's through the lens of the small business owner that we really review legislation and also plan and carry out everything that we do at the chamber. For many years, less than $2 million per year in funding from the City of Columbus has been allotted for towards initiatives with a direct focus on small business engagement and support, accounting for only 0.2% of the city's total operating budget for 2018. There's great opportunity and need for enhancement here. We applaud Mayor Ginther under the leadership of Henry. I'll give kudos again to you, Henry, for creating the Small Business Advisory Council, of which Chamber President and CEO Don DePiro is a member. The Columbus Small Business Agenda lays out ways for the Chamber to work with our community peers and public sector partners to elevate entrepreneurial support. We recognize that the Chamber is just one part of this ecosystem, and collaboration is essential for the system to improve and achieve optimum functionality and success. Therefore, we don't have a funding request from the Chamber here today. It's our goal, though, that in this testimony, we want to stress the importance of increased direct funding for small business support from the city and request a dedicated, permanent line item in the city's budget for this purpose. To achieve the goals laid out in the agenda, to make Columbus competitive with cities of comparable size, and to meaningfully support our small business community, we respectfully request funding in the amount of $3 to $5 million annually. And I think that's probably setting it slightly low. All right, I'm going to cut some more. You know, at the Chamber, we stand ready to support you in these efforts on all urban entrepreneurs. We have 4 pillars of work: business solutions, connections, workforce development, and government relations. We really believe we're a responsive, dynamic, and strategic partner to our members and stand ready to support the implementation of this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Holly. We appreciate your advocacy. Does anybody have a response to that? I couldn't agree more. I think one specific thing that you said was a line item for small business development. That is something, when I said we weren't doing that well, that is specifically what I'm talking about. I think that we are moving to that space to have that line item. Again, the request this year is $2.9 million to articulate, to execute the strategy that has been expressed, and we will work with the administration. I do think it's important, though, to also overlay that our small business strategy and budget is housed in ODI and development. So when you put ODI's budget and their work and efforts around the support for small minority businesses, it does increase the total spend that we have as a city for small businesses. That is not taking us off the hook at all. We do need to increase it, and we need to increase it this year specifically because we have the strategy. So I appreciate your comments. That will conclude our public hearing speaking and our hearing this evening. I again want to thank everyone for coming out. I want to thank the departments, CTV for recording this. From my staff, Ms. Linda Capobianco, Stanley Gates, Karina Johnson, Zach Davison. We have Officer Bowden here. That would you please help me recognize and support our police officer who kept us safe this evening? As well as the King Arts Complex for being home for these types of conversations. As we mentioned earlier, everyone who signed up will receive an email summarizing the comments and ideas written down during the first portion of tonight's hearing. Those ideas and comments will serve as the guidelines of principles for me and my council colleagues as we consider this upcoming budget and how the City of Columbus can support small businesses. Council will continue to work through this budget over the next several weeks. I expect that we will pass the budget in early to mid-February. At that time, you'll receive additional communication from our team, specifically illustrating how the input you gave here tonight helped form the Columbus Small Business support in 2020. Thank you all. Thank you for staying. Thank you for being engaged. Good job. Thank you so much, guys.